Vasko himself. I just want to put a little disclaimer in front of this. He's on my board, so if anybody sees me say anything bad, just let me know in the chat directly. Dave is Director for Advanced Technology at Rockwell Automation. He oversees Rockwell research teams across the globe and works on very interesting products, like the one he is working on with Segway inventor Dean Kamen to take tissue and organ manufacturing out of the lab and into production. Dave's a member of the Visiting Committee on Advanced Technology at NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and secretary and a member of the board of directors at the IoT Talent Consortium. And there are a bunch of other things, but they all had really long words in them, so I'm stopping there. Dave has an MS in computer engineering from Case Western Reserve University. Dave, thank you for joining us.
Kathleen, thank you.
Great to see you. We have a lot of great things to talk about. So we're going to put you on the spot. You're coming at this from a corporate perspective. How interested are you in just licensing patents from universities?
Not very, to be honest. That really isn't a strong point for us. There's this impedance mismatch between universities and businesses as far as patents. I mean, in some ways, I think for universities, it's almost like a lottery ticket, that you have this technology and maybe somebody will license it and you become rich and fun things going forward. For businesses, it's more defensive in nature. It's keeping the lights on. So there's been a couple times in my career where if I was not able to establish intellectual property positions in certain areas, then significant parts of the company or the company would not be in place as we know it.
But so, now that sounds like patents. That was your own patents you're talking about?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So go ahead.
But it's how we approach it. We're looking for more of a defensive position with patents. Now, we are definitely interested in technologies that can provide solutions, but normally the patent itself isn't enough. It's the knowledge, the know-how, the expertise, and applied in the right area. And I think as both David and Terry talked about, it's providing solutions with those things that's most important.
I was just going to say, we're careening toward what's becoming the theme of the day, right? So, yep. You know, what are the solutions? Well, then let's talk about business-sponsored research. I mean, that's what everybody's after now anyway. And, you know, Rockwell is the kind of company many universities who are here today would like to see fund more of their research. What kind of barriers have you had to working with universities and funding their research?
Yeah, so one of the things is just the IP agreements. And to be honest, we'd love to be able to get in and do work, but a lot of times it just takes a long time to actually develop those IP agreements. And sometimes that can be detrimental in actually getting things going and being able to sponsor projects. The other one too is just sometimes a knowledge mismatch. Industrial automation it's a fairly complicated field, just with the verticals and all the problems that are there. It takes people a while to get up to speed with it. So if we could establish relationships ahead of time and do some groundwork and get to know each other and build that up before we dive in and try to push the envelope, it helps.
So let's start with, it just takes so long. What are some solutions you might propose to having this not take as long to start working with the university?
Well, I'd love a boilerplate agreement where we could just, there's something that the industry and universities could work with as a starting point. And just to, when we work together, that we could do that. That would be a good jump start. So we could tell if there's ways we could work together. And there's areas we could fall into. There's buckets that just make sense. And then there's buckets that require negotiation. And if we could drive the projects into where we could resolve it the quickest, that would enable us to work quicker together.
So I don't want to dive into too much detail on that, but Tim Honecker, I hope you heard that, because maybe that's something Emron could start thinking about. And probably there's a lot of disagreement about the IP when you start trying to work toward those boilerplate agreements.
There is, and some of the things, I mean, just aren't changeable. So I mean, to be honest, if we just knew where the hard stops are, and we can negotiate faster to get to where we needed to go, or make compromises we need to get to, that would make more sense. If we have to spend 6 months negotiating the IP agreement, it probably isn't going to happen. And
Because the
unfortunately,
technology is moving so fast, right?
it's moving so fast. And then our need for these technologies is fairly quick. We want to be able to plug these things in, get them out to our customers, actually be able to make a profit, and use these advancements to accelerate progress.
So I don't know if it'd be easier to do this in an example or a broad kind of discussion, but could you talk about kind of an ideal arrangement that you might have with the university?
Well, so if the university has taken on the area themselves and they've developed intellectual property around that, we would just license that. We typically prefer to do a paid up license versus a usage license. And just usage licenses are difficult to administer.
Can you define usage license? I'm sure most
So
people
for everyone you sell, you pay a fee.
know.
And that's just, it's difficult for us to administer that. We have almost 400,000 products. And to try to put a counter on which ones use this and that sort of thing, that's difficult. And if it's something that we pay for entirely at the university, we would expect clear use rights from that. We don't need ownership, but we do need clear use rights of the intellectual property if we pay entirely. And there's obviously some ground in between where we would have use rights and would be able to share the intellectual property.
And if you're sponsoring research, what might be a nice way you'd like to do that? Do you like to work with the tenured professors or the graduate students, or
We'd love to be able to establish. Ideally, you establish a relationship, you establish some trust, because it's always there's a lot of things that aren't written down, and understanding the area. Our area is complicated, and being able to understand what our problems are, be able to spend time on that really works the best if we could establish that continuing relationship through the years.
And is the relationship then typically with a researcher who has a lab, or
It typically is a professor.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we've talked about how you think it's really important for these university researchers to leverage what's out there. Tell about what you've seen as they build these technologies, how they use what's out there and don't.
Yeah, so I followed agent technology, and I think IoT has taken a similar tack where I see so many entrepreneurs and they come up with this great idea, and I look at the work they've done, and they've invented almost everything they're using, and 90% of the things that they need already exist. And if they just leverage things that exist, they can concentrate on the 10% where they're adding value. And not only that, people are more likely to adopt what they're doing if it leverages the infrastructures that are already there. So I think the first part is just understanding what's there, being able to leverage it, and then understanding where you need to extend it and where you could add value. And that's the opportunity.
So in some ways, the two-way street that we're talking about, one of the things you really bring then to the university is this awareness of what's out there already, and maybe save them time, like use this off the shelf, don't invent that part.
Yeah. And even Rockwell, we're a very large company, but a lot of the stuff we do with communications interaction is industry worldwide standards. We have no desire to create that on our own. So a little group of 2 or 3 people, they're not going to be able to drive those things forward on their own, and we could help them with that.
You just made me realize, we know that Rockwell does factory automation, but like we mentioned in the beginning, that what you're doing with Dean Kamen's lab with the tissue production, can you kind of talk about the scope of projects you're interested in?
Yeah, so that one's really unique. We have people that are able to do just incredible work. They can create human tissue, macular tissue for eyes to create vision, to allow vision for macular degeneration, cartilage, skin, blood vessels, and we're even seeing some work on organs these days. They can do this in the lab, they can't scale it. And it takes a long time for them to scale it. It'd be like if your grandmother baked these incredible cookies and you said, okay, we want you to bake 1 million per month. Can you do that? And she's not going to have the slightest idea how to do it. The same with the researchers. They're not really industrial automation experts. We can scale things. And the gap we're seeing there is that they're taking it from the lab, and it's lab equipment. And that we need to really get production equipment into their hands as quickly as possible. And we need to modularize it. All these researchers are doing very, very different things. But to be honest, the different steps that are taken are mostly repeated in almost every one of those labs. So we can modularize that and make it all closed loop, so you're not going to have a lot of contamination going on. So that's really what we do, is allow the scalability, and we even get the FDA involved in trying to sort through what's actually needed. And as we do the analytics, and we do the analytics very early, to capture that information and just the information they need to take it to the next step.
So it's interesting, instead of thinking of Rockwell as factory automation, it's almost like scaling production in any area.
I mean, that's what automation is. It's scaling production, taking it from um, a simple process and being able to scale it up to what you need. Now, with medical, the opportunity is huge. I mean, some of these are 6 and 7 figure surgeries today, where if you could get these tissues developed cheaply, these could be $10,000 surgeries in the future. So, and it's just a matter of being able to develop these in quantity, and that's the opportunity to make these things available. But yeah, scalability is what we do, and that somebody starts off, and being able to take them to a bigger factory and more factories, that's really our job. That's our job.
Well, back to kind of the industrial IoT space. What kind of work will be done in this space in the next few years and longer? What needs to happen?
So we've been involved in this for a couple decades, and it's been more research, and now the communications are viable. They're the wired, wireless, cellular, they're all there. The processing power is there. The security is getting better. The analytics and the AI have really stepped up, and we have a lot of visualization. So we really have the infrastructure there, the tools there to make progress. So there's almost no customer we can go to where we couldn't provide value to them by applying the technologies. The key thing is how quick we do it. And that's really the opportunity, is how can we quickly make the plant more optimized, higher production, less energy usage, less downtime, without putting a dozen PhD data scientists out on the plant floor to try to do that, and trying to have the customers be able to be involved in that and be able to drive these tools on their own. So it's possible, but it's a matter of doing it with the least effort and providing the most impact in the least amount of time.
It's an amazing perspective, Dave. Thank you so much for joining us. And anyone wants to pursue any of this further with Dave, I would be happy to connect you if that's okay with Dave.
Absolutely.
And
Kathleen, thank you.
and your team. So thank you so much. We are going to take everyone out of the spotlight now and prepare to move, people.